Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm thrilled to have you here for another captivating tale that will tug at your heartstrings and keep you on the edge of your seat. Today's story is one of love, betrayal, and the quest for self-discovery. It's titled Caught Cheating. Husband hires private investigator. Shocking footage revealed. Get ready to experience a tale of trust shattered and the pursuit of truth as we uncover the secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Tell something was up, but I didn't press. She said she was tired. So I went with it over the next few days. I started noticing that she was on her phone quite a bit, even around dinner time. I would ask, why is she texting a lot these days? And she would tell me that she was in a group chat, talking with her girlfriends about the girls' night out they had and planning another one. I didn't think much of it at the time. She was constantly texting her girlfriends. It was nothing new, but looking back now, I realized she was probably planning something with them that she didn't want me to know about. My wife works as a consultant for a big firm and would always come home stressed. So I didn't mind her having a night out with her girlfriends every so often. But now she is talking about another girl's night out. This will be the second girl's night out coming up in less than 3 weeks. The bad thing is, these women she hangs out with, 4 of them are all single. She is the only married one of the bunch, which in my opinion is not a good thing because it means she is the only one with something to lose. The other women are footloose and fancy-free. I don't want my wife to be a cheater, but I also don't want to control her or tell her what she can and cannot do. So, her second girl's night out came and went. I told her the next day that she needed to be careful and make sure her single friends didn't cause her to fuck up her marriage. She looked at me funny, but didn't say anything. After work one day, I stopped by my parents' house and talked to them about my frustration with my wife participating in these frequent girls' night out parties. I told my mom that the women she hangs out with are all single and none of them have anything to lose. My mom looked at me and said, "Well, I don't see anything wrong with a girl's night out, but I do see a problem with a girl's night out with only single women." My mom said she is playing with fire. Then my dad chimed in and said, "Yeah, if I were you, I would put my foot down and tell her that's enough." He also said the fact that she keeps going out to party without you is a major cause for concern. Then my mom jumped in again and said she did a girl's night out with her friends. 3 times in the 40 years, my parents have been married, but my mom's girlfriends were all married. Mom said they were home by 11 p.m. They didn't stay out later than that. I thought about what they said on my way home, and I decided they were right. I needed to nip this in the bud before it got out of hand. When I got home, I talked to my wife about it, and she got angry saying I was being controlling and didn't trust her. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to control her. I just wanted her to be careful because I loved her. She didn't want to hear it and went to bed angry. The next day she left for her girls' night out. She didn't even come home from work. This was her third girls' night out. I did not even know about this one. My wife didn't get home until after 2 in the morning. I didn't say anything. I just waited up for her. I pretended to be asleep. When she entered the bedroom, I decided I needed to find out what was going on and why she wanted to leave her family and party with her girlfriends on the way to work the next day. I called a friend of mine and asked him, did he still have the contact information for the private investigator he used for his company? A little backstory. My friend had an employee who was trying to get workman's comp for having an accident on the job. His employee was complaining after the accident that he couldn't come to work. So my friend promptly hired a private investigator. Turns out he wasn't injured at all. He was playing golf, played in a flag football league. Needless to say, he dropped the workman's comp claim. My friend gave me the number of the private investigator he used. He then asked me, was everything okay? I told him I wasn't sure. And I indicated that I think my wife is doing something she wasn't supposed to be doing. I said, she has been going out and doing these so-called girls' night out parties. My friend then asked me what made me think my wife was cheating. I told him about the 3 times she had gone out recently and stayed out until after midnight, coming home, smelling of alcohol. I also told him that when I confronted her about it, she got angry and defensive. He then said to me, well, it sounds like you have enough. I called the private investigator and set up an appointment to meet him after work. I met the private investigator and he asked me what I wanted him to do. I told him I wanted him to follow my wife and see what she was doing when she went out on her so-called girls' night out. The private investigator told me his fee was $100 per hour. And I said, I didn't care. I just wanted to know what my wife was doing. I gave the private investigator a picture of my wife. I told him what kind of car she drove, where she worked, and what hours she worked. The private investigator told me he would start following my wife the next day. I waited impatiently for the private investigator to call me and tell me what my wife was doing. Finally, after 3 days, he called me. The private investigator told me to meet him after work. He had some footage to show me. He showed me footage of my wife leaving work in different clothes that day. On that day, she didn't leave for work in those clothes. She changed at work. He followed her to a bar. He went in and noticed she went to a table with a bunch of women, which were her girlfriends. They were there for about 2 hours. Then they all left. He followed them to a house about 15 minutes from the bar. He noticed a guy answered the door and they all went in. The private investigator was dressed in black. He tells me that at night, it helps him get closer for his surveillance. He walked up to a window at a slight distance and noticed all the girls were dancing, grinding on a few guys. And my wife was in the corner with some guy. He was squeezing her butt and she was kissing him. After that, he looked at me and told me, I think you have enough to do what you need to do. He handed me this flash drive and he told me he will keep a copy just as a precaution. After meeting with the private investigator, I went home and cried. I couldn't believe my wife of 9 years had cheated on me and she was still doing it. I wanted to confront her, but I didn't want to show her the footage. The next day I got up and left for work without saying anything to my wife. She sent me a text on the way to work, asking why I didn't say anything to her. When I left, I did not respond to the text. When I got to work, I made it a point to call a few divorce lawyers to see what I was dealing with and how I could protect myself. I also started looking for a place to stay because I knew there was no way I could stay in the house with my wife. I will miss the boys, but their mother did this. I was absolutely devastated. My whole world had been turned upside down and I didn't know how to fix it. The only solution was divorce. I wasn't going to try and fix our marriage. She wants this single life. She can have it. I had to be strategic because I didn't want the boys to be alone while their mother went out on her girls' night out. I live in Massachusetts, which is a no-fault state, that much I know. So divorce should be pretty easy. When I got home that night, my wife was home sitting on the couch with the boys. I walked in and she asked how my day was. And the boys smiled at me and said, "Hey, Dad." I wanted to cry, but I had to hold it in. A few hours go by and everyone is winding down. My wife puts the boys to bed and comes downstairs and asks me if I want to watch a movie with her. I said, no, I don't think so. She then said, okay, I'm going to bed. I waited until she was in bed to go upstairs and get my stuff and leave. I waited until she fell asleep before I left the house. I didn't have anywhere to go yet. So I went to my parents. It was late. My dad was worried and asked me, was I okay? I told him I had something to show him. We sat down at the dining room table. I pulled up the footage that my private investigator compiled and showed my dad what the private investigator found. And my dad was in disbelief. My mom came downstairs and I showed her too. They were both speechless. I told them I was moving out and getting a divorce. They didn't say anything to try and stop me. I'm sure they were disappointed, but what could they say? My wife had cheated on me and I was done. I stayed at my parents' house that night. The next morning I got up, I sent my boss a text and told him that I would be coming in late. I was honest with him and he didn't have a problem with it. After talking to my boss, I noticed my wife had sent me hundreds of text messages, wondering where I was and why I left last night. I didn't respond to any of them. I found an attorney and filed for divorce based on the grounds of adultery. And I moved out of the house. I went back to the house when I knew my wife wouldn't be there. And I left a note on the kitchen counter. I told her that I had filed for divorce and that she could find me at my parents' house if she needed anything. After work, I drove to my parents' house and I saw my wife's car parked in the driveway. I went inside and I saw my wife sitting at the kitchen table crying. She asked me why I filed for divorce, and I slowly pulled out my phone and showed her the footage and told her that I did not deserve this. I didn't deserve the way you were treating me. We sat and talked for a while, and we both decided it would be best if we divorced. I told her I didn't want the house. We were renting it anyway, so she could have it. She makes enough money to pay for it. At the divorce hearing, it was amicable. The judge gave me 30 days to get the rest of my things. I didn't go after her for alimony. I made more than her, and I didn't have to pay child support. She was getting that from the kid's father already. We are both the same age, 33, and the boys are 7 and 8. It was heartbreaking because I loved those boys like they were my own, and I was their father in every way, but biologically. My job offered me a position out of state, and I took it, changed my phone number. Only my parents and a few friends have my new number, and started a new life. It's been almost a year now, and I'm doing well. I've started dating again, and I'm in a much better place emotionally. My friends have told me that my ex-wife was asking about me, and she even tried to reach out to me on social media. But I have no desire to speak to her or see her again. I'm glad I made the decision to move on with my life. And I hope you can do the same if you're in a similar situation. Thanks for reading. I have never shared anything about my life on these forums, but this was heartbreaking for me. I still struggle at times, but one day at a time is how I am dealing with it. If you enjoyed this story, please show your support by hitting the like button. Your engagement means the world to me and helps keep the stories coming. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on future tales filled with unexpected twists and turns. Subscribing not only keeps you in the loop, but also supports me in my quest to bring you more captivating stories. So, take a moment to like and subscribe. Thank you again for your support, and stay tuned for more incredible journeys. Until next time, keep believing in the power of stories to transform. Hey there, storytellers. Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the captivating tales that unfold in the intricate web of human relationships. Today, I have a story that will leave you on the edge of your seat, filled with betrayal, revenge, and unexpected twists. The title of today's tale is Caught My Husband Cheating on His Birthday. His reaction will shock you. Prepare yourselves for a roller coaster of emotions as we delve into the shocking events that unfolded when Wendy returned home early from a business trip, only to discover her husband's deceit. But before we dive into the story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest storytelling adventures. Now, let's jump right into the drama. I had returned home from business trip earlier than planned, and I had the all-too-natural idea of surprising my husband with my return and with a nice dinner. I hid myself in the living room closet, trying not to laugh out loud with excitement from seeing him all surprised and happy to see me, when the front door finally opened and I could hear his voice. But then, I also heard a woman's voice that I didn't recognize, and in a few moments, I saw them come into the living room together, arm in arm. My husband was with another woman, a stranger to me. At that moment, I realized that everything was a lie, and what was going to be a surprise became revenge. I was never going to forgive him, and he was going to pay well for his actions. How could he betray me, his own wife? Prepare yourself, darling, for what might be your last few seconds of precious life. My name is Wendy, and I'm a 32-year-old office woman. After graduating from college, I got a job at a major company that manages gardening equipment, and since then, I've been working hard as a career woman with a potentially bright future ahead of her. Up until about a year ago, I only cared about my working life and my personal success as a working member of society, but a year ago, I met Landon, my future husband. We met through a mutual friend who invited the two of us to a small drinking party at a nice tavern downtown, and he worked in another smaller company. We hit it off, and after 17 months of being a couple, we got married, and we lived a happy life together as a working couple. My husband works for a small business in agricultural machines, and he never works overtime, and I don't work overtime either, and I also came home earlier than he did, so whenever I did, I would often wait for him after I cooked something for dinner. It was hard to do housework after work, but my husband worked hard in a physically demanding job, and my determination to cheer up with a meal was pretty impressive, so I didn't really mind doing the housework. As long as Landon could rest at home, nice and peaceful, when he was tired, that was good enough for me. A part of me also wanted him to think that I was a good wife for him, so, in my own way, I was doing my best at home too. Then, one day, it was decided that I was going to go on a long-term business trip. This business trip was related to an impending promotion of mine, and I was very excited. I even thought that this business trip would decide the fate of my career, if not my life itself. But during the trip, Landon would be alone in the house. He's a grown man who can take care of himself like it was a walk in the park, so there wasn't any need to worry. But one thing you should know about my husband, he is a catastrophically poor cook, and he's never done a day's housework in his life. Up until we got married, he was living in his parents' home, and everything was taken by my mother-in-law, Mrs. Braths. Landon can't even do his own laundry, but nowadays, in this advanced society, we have delivery service for meals, and there's a laundromat a short walk away from where we lived for laundry. I was sure he could manage. And while I was on my business trip, my husband was going to celebrate his 34th birthday. We used to spend his birthday together, but because of this stupid business trip, we couldn't spend it together this time. Landon, honey, we won't be able to celebrate your birthday together this year. I'm so sorry. Oh, Wendy, darling, it's okay. It can't be helped in this case. You have work to do. But good luck with your work, darling. I've always loved you because you always try to do your best. We'll do something to celebrate it again when you come back. How's that? That idea sounds awesome. Thanks so much. And I'm really sorry. I'll do my best as always. With some kind words from my husband, I got even more determined to do great, and I headed out on my business trip. While I was away, I was very busy. Work often lasted until after I usually went home. This made it difficult for me to find enough time to call my husband or have a real-time conversation over text messages. I did call him every once in a while, and by that I mean a couple of days. But when I could reach him, perhaps he was busy at the moment because he never answered the phone. I couldn't get in touch with him, other than messages, and it just wasn't the same. I missed him, but Landon had sent me off with his great words of encouragement, so I focused on working hard to land that big promotion. My hard work paid off in the end, because I finished a little bit early, and that meant that I could go home from my business trip a few days earlier than scheduled. I was so happy. I was able to come home on my husband's birthday, even though I told him I couldn't make it because of this business trip. I had the all-too-natural idea of surprising my husband with my return, and with a nice dinner on the day of his birthday. The plan was that I would leave work early on his birthday and bring home Chinese food and a nice birthday cake for him, and the wallet he wanted as a present. I had it all ready. I could only imagine how happy he would be to see me back home on his birthday. Just envisioning the look of surprise and excitement he would surely have on his face made me so eager to hurry up and get home. I arrived home long before he always did. That night would probably be the same as always. He would be home by 6 p.m. To surprise him, I hid in the living room closet. But even after 6 p.m., he still wasn't home. I wondered if it might be because he was celebrating his birthday with a bunch of his colleagues, and as I slowly began to be convinced that's what he was doing, I felt grateful for his friends. But I still wanted to see the look of surprise and excitement on Landon's face. So I didn't call it a night, even when it was after 6:30 p.m. I remained in the closet and waited for the familiar hum of his car. I was pretty tired from my long and tedious business trip where I spent an ungodly amount of time in front of papers and computer screens, and before I knew it, I was fast asleep. I only realized I was when I woke up a few hours later from the sound of a rumbling car engine. I opened the closet door slightly, and through the window, I saw the signal lights of the car scintillating. My husband had come home at last. I quietly closed the closet door and waited for him for another few minutes. I heard the front door open, and the familiar sound of Landon's business shoes echoed through the house. I had a good time today. Thank you for the delicious dinner. It was delicious, wasn't it? It was nice to spend your birthday with you, sweetie. Why in the goddamn world of ignorant bliss did I hear a woman's voice? One that I didn't recognize, in any case. And that sounded suspiciously young. I was so upset, but I tried not to make a sound in the closet. Seriously, I can't believe how happy a simple business trip could make me. I feel like every day I get to spend with you, Clara. I'm undoubtedly the happiest man in the world. It's actually insane how great I feel right now. Thank you, sweetie. I love spending time with you too. I can't help but feel sorry for your wife, but I always tell myself that it can't be helped. It's okay, darling. I'm only married to her for her money. You're the only woman I've ever loved. Am I really? Are you seriously only married to her because she's got bags of money stashed away? I know it'd be so hard for me when I discover my own loving husband says things like that about me. There's nothing good about her except for her money, literally the only thing she is going for her. And they got ridiculously excited as they piled on the bad things about me. I was shell-shocked, but unknowing of my presence in the room, they went on talking shit about me, laughing all the while. I always have an amazing time with you, Clara, but if I imagine that I only had a relationship with that hag, it's like suffocating me. It's a real nightmare. Then you're lucky I'm here. I'll say this again. I never loved Wendy. I love you so much, and I'm going to do what we can to be together, okay? Then they went to take a bath. I took advantage of the opportunity and left the house quietly. Maybe the better option would have been to interrogate the two slimy traitors right then and there, but the shock at what I'd witnessed was just too overwhelming. It was extremely difficult to prevent myself from hyperventilating and screaming in sorrow. I couldn't face the reality just yet. I needed time to gather my senses first. I booked a hotel room nearby and stayed there that night. As I was trudging towards the hotel, my emotions got the better of me, and I suddenly started to cry. I sat down on a bench in a small park, ripped open the box that contained Lana's birthday cake, forced my fingers around a large clump of dessert, and stuffed it in my mouth. The cream tasted very sweet, and somehow my tears, which were streaming into my mouth at this point, added a nice little tang at the beginning of each bite. From the point of view of passerbys, I was basically a woman dressed in office uniform, stuffing a ridiculous amount of birthday cake into my mouth, crying all the while, and getting cream in every nook and cranny of my face. I definitely looked a suspicious person, but during that time of personal crisis, what people thought of me was the least of my problems, and I couldn't care less. After crying a legitimate rainstorm, my sadness towards the situation gradually transformed into anger towards my husband. I don't mean to say that he owes me something, but no one can deny I've done so much for him. I cooked for him, did the housework for him, all because he couldn't do shit around the house, and when he told me there was something he wanted, I went, and actually something nice for him. I got him a birthday present that cost thousands of dollars, and he was still willing to cast me aside as an ATM machine and never accept me as the one he chose to spend the rest of his life with. Call me a money grubber, will you? Well, that doesn't come for free, my dearest. I threw the wallet I'd bought for his birthday as hard as I could into a nearby trash can. You've got some nerve to cheat on your wife while she's away on a business trip, my dearest, I muttered to myself as I left the park. On the way to the hotel, I decided to get a divorce, but I knew he would only be pleased if I divorced my husband. I decided to really make him suffer for his crimes before divorcing him. For a while thereafter, I continued to stay at the hotel. I was supposed to go back home next week, so until then, I can't go home. But I did actually stop by my house on the way, and the fact that I found Landon's car was strange, very strange indeed. At this time of night, he's supposed to be at work still. I called his company posing as a client and asked the receptionist at the other end of the phone, "Excuse me, is Mr. Landon Brass present at this hour?" "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it seems Mr. Brass has taken a vacation for about a week." "Oh, is that so? Thank you for telling me." So my husband is on vacation for a week. That led me to wonder if the woman whom he was having an affair with worked for the same company. I checked. Well then, is there someone by the name of Clara? "I'm so sorry, ma'am. It seems Miss McIntyre is also on vacation for about a week. Is there anything you need to inform us about? If it's urgent, I can put someone else on the phone to assist you." "No, it's not urgent. Thank you so much. Have a nice day, sir. After I said that, I hung up. I found out that my husband was having an affair with one of his coworkers. I was so sick of his stupid bullshit, I wanted to throw up. I couldn't comprehend the fact that I used to love Landon Brass. Now, I feel nothing but contempt, disgust, and fury. I stayed out of the house for a while, checking on them both from a distance. After perhaps an hour or so, I saw them having inappropriate physical contact as they exited the house. They got into Landon's car and drove off somewhere. They were each carrying a large suitcase, so naturally, I assumed the two snakes were going on a trip, taking an entire week off from work just to go on a vacation of adultery. What a couple of carefree jellyfishes. I made sure my husband was out of the house completely before I went inside. I decided to take all of my valuables and all the things I needed and leave the house, never to return to live again. After I was sure I had packed everything, I made one last check of the house, which was in fact a kind of formal goodbye to the building. I love that house. It was perfect for both of us to have a nice and peaceful time to rest after a hard day's work, and the backyard was absolutely beautiful. Landon and I were going to build a life together, and the first step was buying this house with most of what we'd saved up. It was not a new house by any means, but considering the fact that I was going to live in it with the person I loved, it was the best house I could have asked for. But now, I was living in it with a traitor, and I didn't feel comfortable at all. My biggest desire was to leave that house as quickly as I could, but my old love for this house made me linger for another few minutes. I took a walk around the inside. I discovered a lot of the woman's belongings, Clara's belongings. I became positive that while I was away on my business trip, they were indeed planning on living together in their cheesy, unfaithful excuse of passion. Assorted lotions, shampoos, conditioners, and items of makeup that weren't mine lined the nightstand in Landon's bedroom. His closet lodged her clothes, anything ranging from casual jeans and sweaters, to beautiful dresses, to inappropriately tiny blouses. The room had a fruity smell to it, and I later found out why. Landon's old bedsheets, which were now nowhere to be found, had been thrown away, probably, and replaced with new, orange-scented ones. When I saw all this, I was beyond angry. I was utterly mortified. I wondered what all the time we had spent meant exactly. Which had we been trying to build up the whole time? I left the house, and first went straight to a trusted lawyer, who helped me prepare for the divorce, and then I went to a detective agency to gather evidence against the affair. When I went to the house the second time, I probably should have taken pictures of the evidence, but I felt like if I took pictures with my phone, the scene would burn itself into my mind in the worst way possible, and I didn't like it. Additionally, I couldn't stay in the hotel forever, so I rented an apartment that could accommodate a tenant for a month at a time. That's where I put all the stuff I had packed and taken away with me when I left the house. I had to find a new, bigger, better place to live. By this time, I had already made up my mind on getting a divorce, and nothing was going to change my mind. I no longer had any love for Landon Brass, and he was dead to me, but something told me it wasn't enough. Of all the pain he had caused me, I have to pay him back with pain tenfold. Otherwise, my gut would never be satisfied, nor would it ever forgive me for backing out. As I went about my work as usual, I waited for a call from the detective agency, and I got a phone call from at what was quite possibly the best time ever. They said they had accumulated enough evidence, which was excellent news. I asked them to keep that evidence in a secure place while I went back to my husband's house. There was a car parked outside, so I knew he must have returned from his trip of adultery. After I confirmed he was inside the house, I headed to the cake shop and bought a cake before I went back to my husband's house. I unlocked the door, and I quietly entered the building. I made sure he was not in the living room, and then proceeded to approach his bedroom door. As I got ever closer, I could hear my husband and the woman known as Clara McIntyre, whom he was having an affair with, inside. I held up the box that contained the cake, opened it up quietly, took out the dessert, set the box aside in the corridor, and burst into the room. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. My voice startled them both, and their faces expressed the purest shock I'd ever seen. It was priceless, and I wanted to laugh, but keeping a straight face here and going through with the plan was key. Ignoring their ridiculous faces, I kept on singing. Happy birthday, dear traitor, happy birthday to you. Once I finished singing, I threw the entire cake at my husband as hard and as accurately as I could. The dessert landed with a satisfying splat all over his naked upper body, and some of the cream flew into the naked woman as well. Hey, what the frick are you doing, Wendy? What the frick am I doing? Well, look who's talking. And what do you think you're doing, eh? Well, I mean, wait. I didn't know you were home already. Why the hell didn't you call me? Why didn't I call you? Listen, buddy, I'm about to clue you in on the truth here. I was already here on your birthday. I hope I didn't say anything more to help you understand. Oh my God, there's no way. My husband's mouth started to spasm, and his darling lover must have been more speechless than he. Her mouth gaped open and gave me the impression she physically couldn't get it shut. I think you just stole my frickin' line, Mr. Brass. There's no way I'm seeing any of this right now. Could you explain to what exactly it is you're doing? Well, this is, what does you know about this place, madam? This is my house, you know. Well, perhaps my sudden intrusion really did the job to leave them catatonic. They were visibly upset, and they were not answering any of my questions. I'm only a money grubber, after all, and this lady is the only one you love, right? Well, I have just the remedy for that. From now on, you will pay me back all the money that you stole from me. I'm going to demand alimony from you, and you better pay me back every single penny you owe me. No sooner had I uttered the word alimony than my husband gasped, and then I looked at the woman whom he was having an affair with. She was shaking. Well, don't just stay there where you are, in that uncomfortable position. Get down on the floor, on your knees. I'm sure you'll feel a lot better that way. The moment I told her so, they both rushed off the bed, kneeled before me, and bowed their heads towards the floor. I'm sorry, I was having a little bit of fun with her. Since you were away working, I missed you, and the loneliness was getting to me. Yes, that's all true. I have a husband myself, but he never pays any attention to me, and I was in desperate need of someone who appreciated my company. Exactly, and we were actually talking about ending things right when you barged in, Wendy. We were just saying goodbye to each other. Yes, we were. We both agreed it wasn't good for the ones we chose to marry originally. We literally just broke up, Wendy. Cheaters, liars, backstabbing traitors. I'm pretty sure all of these things describe the same two people. Let's see who can guess the right answer. I heard you two outside earlier, loud and clear. Bullshit. You were talking about ending things. What you were really talking about was taking a 2-week trip to Japan next. You've got to be kidding me. How do two people stoop to such low humanity? Damn it. That's what I said, and both he and the woman went deathly pale, indicating I hit the nail on the head. You guys are such assholes. I already mentioned I heard you guys talking shit about me the night of this bastard's birthday. With me having this much knowledge about what you think about my frickin' existence, you really think I'm gonna whatever horseshit excuse your bird brains come up with? I'm sorry. I admit that I cheated on you, and I deeply apologize. I hope you can forgive me. Just because you act all responsible and innocent right now doesn't mean you're any closer to being forgiven. I'm sorry, I really am. I really do believe that what I did was wrong. Divorce me. Now. Please, please don't say such things, Wendy. Really, it was just for fun. Ma'am, on behalf of Landon, I'm begging you, don't divorce him. Please. The name's Clara, right? Who are you to talk to on behalf of Landon Brass? Don't you dare forget that you're eligible for paying me alimony too. But, I was just having an affair. It's not like we were married, Landon and I. I don't think the law states that you can demand alimony from me because it was just fun and games. I don't believe this. Tell me what exactly is your IQ score. I'm just dying to know. Of course I can legally demand alimony from you. You knew the man whom you were with was married to another woman, and yet you went on with the affair, hoping to get something nice out of it. Newsflash, lady. Nothing nice comes out of unfaithfulness. I was so stunned that this woman was pretty much claiming that the sun was basically the world's largest pizza in the entire state of Mexico. I couldn't believe I'd lost my actual husband to a woman with zero common sense. I want a divorce. I've already hired a lawyer, so if you want to know more about the demands, you'll hear about it from him. I've also been to the detective agency, and they acquired a lot of solid evidence of your stupid affair. If you're thinking of uttering excuses to get yourself out of this, don't freaking bother. It doesn't make any sense, for one thing. And second, you'd be digging your own grave. You can't be serious. I don't want a divorce. I don't want a divorce. You even said you didn't want to talk to me. Being around me was enough to get you disgusted enough to want to run the frick away from this place. I don't know how you expect us to live with ourselves as a married couple now that the relationship is ruined. Oh wait, of course. I'm the money grubber, so you literally need me in order to survive, right? No, no, that's not it. Oh, darling, it's a shame. Because this year, I actually got you that luxury brand wallet you've been wanting for quite some time. I had it, ready for you. And I was gonna give it to you. Now it's in the trash. No, there's no way you. Maybe you should have stayed true to yourself. Goodbye. That's all I had to say, and I left them with their grief and shame, alone in the house. Thereafter, Mr. Brass tried calling me a few times, but I ignored them all. I left everything to my lawyer. Mr. Brass was later fired from his job. Perhaps the fact that I went to the company where he and the woman whom he was having an affair with worked, and gave them an official letter from the detective agency that contained the evidence of their adultery. Nowadays, it isn't uncommon anymore to hear about people that cheated on their husbands or wives, and it's pretty much common knowledge right now that anyone who does engage in such crimes against humanity will lose credibility in the company and in life in general. How in the world did Mr. Brass and Miss McIntyre not know anything about that? Mr. Brass was so dependent on me for living expenses, so I wouldn't be surprised if he never saved a penny. Now that he was fired, he pleaded to me through my lawyer to let him pay the alimony and monthly installments. I agreed, as long as he paid me in full. As for Miss McIntyre, she was fired from her job and was left without any money. Mr. McIntyre found out about the affair. I believe he's also demanding alimony. She tried to turn to Mr. Brass for help, but found no luck with him, as he didn't have any savings whatsoever and was now working part-time. She decided she couldn't rely on him, and thus she betrayed him and replaced him with a man who seemed to be loaded with money. But that man turned out to be quite formidable because he didn't even work, and even though he's neck-deep in debt, he never failed to waste his money on stupid things like gambling and marijuana. Knowing that neither Mr. Brass nor Miss McIntyre are living happy lives after their affair was exposed makes me feel somewhat relieved. The irony is that now I know full well it's not good to take pleasure in other people's unhappiness. I got a big promotion after that long business trip I took, and I was praised as the first woman in the company's history to be promoted to that position at such a young age, 32. There are junior staff who admire me because of this achievement and makes me subconsciously put more time and effort into my work. It's a very good thing I love my work, and now I've set myself a new challenge. To be a good boss who sets a good example for my subordinates, to be a trusted employee of the company and contribute to bringing it to greatness, and to acquire what is needed to be promoted even further up in the ranks of the enterprise. Wish me luck, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us through this intense and emotional story. If you found it as compelling as we did, make sure to leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories. Hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when we release a new video. Until next time, take care and remember, sometimes, the truth is more terrible. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm thrilled to have you here for another captivating tale that will tug at your heartstrings and keep you on the edge of your seat. Today's story is one of love, betrayal, and the quest for self-discovery. It's titled Caught My Wife Cheating, unraveling the betrayal story of deception and heartbreak. She all but stopped messaging me during the day. And when she did, right, it was short things about dinner or other trivial items. She started going grocery shopping alone, needed her time. This is something we used to do together. She has always gone running after work and on weekends, but now with it getting too dark and cold, her running on the weekends have turned into 3 to 4 hour events. She moved out onto the couch saying I moved around too much and she couldn't sleep. The couch then became the guest bedroom. That's when I finally confronted her. She said that she was texting the other man because he had been open about his mental health issues. She has struggled with anxiety and depression for a while, but we had it under better control with counseling and medication. She even initially told me she was going to talk to him, and because I knew him, he goes to our church and is our insurance guy. I foolishly thought that would be okay. On November 14th, I asked her if she still loved me and she said yes, but she hasn't been happy for quite a while and it's been a difficult year and she wasn't sure if she wanted to work on the marriage or not. I told her that I noticed that she hid her phone. Anytime I came into the room, that's when she told me who the other man was. She said that they texted and met sometimes for lunch, but he was just a friend. She said it over and over. As I asked questions about him, I got angry and incredibly sad at the same time and told her that it ceased being just friends when she felt like she had to hide it from me. I asked if she talked about me to him. She said she did. I told her that her affair hurt almost as bad as if she had slept with him. Over the next few days, I just could not shake the feeling that there was more going on than she told me. It's difficult because she says she doesn't want to work on the marriage. I looked at phone records and they call each other first thing in the morning. And during most lunches, then again, as soon as she gets off work, the phone call started on October 10th. So at least a month. She doesn't text him because they use Signal and I don't have access to her phone. Plus it deletes the messages as soon as you send them. Anyway, I talked to her again on Sunday, and she said that they only talk and hug. I don't believe her. Maybe it's because of the lies and the broken trust, but I just feel like more is going on than she is telling me. She's currently in the process of finding a new place to live. She was going to wait until January, but I told her last night that I wouldn't be her plan B and that if she was waiting to move out to spare my feelings, to not worry about that. She put a deposit on a place today during her lunch hour. In Virginia, we must be separated for 6 months before we can divorce. As soon as she moves into her new place, that will start the separation time. I've left messages with a couple of divorce attorneys this week, but because of the holiday, they're slow getting back to me. I think I want to split amicably if possible, but I also want to know how far she has taken it. I feel this need to know if it was just an emotional affair or if it was a physical affair. Does it really matter though? Do I push it where she doesn't want to work on our marriage, or just let her go and move on with my life? We've been married for 18 years and luckily have no children. I just feel so lost right now, lightheaded and in a fog. I appreciate any advice. Second story is called Caught My Wife Cheating, found out 2 months ago. I've been lurking on this site for a month now and finally decided to post. Short story is that my wife and I have been married since 1994. And I found out about 2 months ago that she has been engaged in a physical affair with a friend of ours for about 6 months. We are both in our mid to late 40s, both in decent shape. And we have a son who has grown and on his own. I will start off by saying that I have not been happy in my marriage for a good 15 years or so. Around 2005, she had an affair with a coworker. I was devastated. I busted her. She did all the crying and hemming and hawing, promising never to cheat again. I kicked her out for a couple of months. And we went to a crappy marriage counselor who basically blamed me for all her bad choices, thinking I was at fault for it all. I sucked it up and we went on and basically buried the whole thing. She was relieved and seemed happy with me, but I kept my mouth shut and just lived with it because I thought that is what a man was supposed to do. Looking back, that year was the year my soul started dying. Now I am relieved, almost ecstatic. You all do not need to console me because I am not in pain. If anything, I am happy because now I can divorce my cheater and get out of this fake marriage without having to feel like the bad guy or that I am in the wrong. She has given me the reason I have needed for 15 years to finally escape without my friends and family making me out to be the villain. I can say with confidence that I have been a good husband to her all these years. Am I without any faults? No, of course not, but I have never done anything over the past 15 years to warrant this treatment. She knows full well that if she were caught again, then that would be it. Which leads me to believe this is an exit affair on her part. and she wants me to bust her. That is the feeling I get. Maybe I am wrong, but I have a hard time thinking she is that stupid to cheat again after what we went through before and expect me to forgive her again. So, over the past 2 months, I have gathered all the evidence I need to divorce her. I have not confronted her yet or had her served. I do want to eventually expose her to our friends and families in order to protect my own reputation. But I have some questions. 1. Should I wait until after the divorce is final to expose her to our families and the other guy's wife? If I expose now, word might get back to her employer, and I don't want her getting fired. I made the stupid mistake of marrying and living in a state where alimony is mandatory. So, if she gets fired, then I'm on the hook. She makes more than me. If she doesn't lose her job, I could ask for alimony, but I won't. 2. How do I tell my son? He was just 6 when she cheated the first time. And even though he couldn't understand at the time, he saw what it did to us. And I think he was affected by our separation. He will be pissed at her, but I don't know any reason why I should lie to him. 3. Should I ask her to move out or try to keep things amicable until the divorce goes through and just live together? I want to keep the house, and in my divorce petition, I state that I will buy out her share of the equity for. I want to start dating again soon. Is there anyone here who went through a divorce where you live with your spouse but dated other people? Or is it best to wait? Third story, caught my wife cheating. She is bipolar. Iguis. I really could use some advice. My wife is bipolar and has suffered lots of abuse growing up, including abuse by a family member and abuse by her abuser ex-boyfriend who is in jail. I am a private investigator and task force agent. And I missed all the signs. Long story short, we met online as she was unconsciously seeking for a white knight experienced in helping abuse survivors and ended up falling for me within a month. And so did I. Due to COVID, our meeting in person got delayed for months. And after we married, I discovered she was an escort, sugar baby for 3 years. She started on it as to get back at her abusive boyfriend. And also because she was conditioned to be objectified since she was little. She basically stopped doing it around 4 months before we met in person. And we married 3 months after meeting many times. I was hurting because she disappeared. And now I know why she has cried, apologized, and says she feels lots of hate, shame, and disgust towards herself. I believe her. I went to the finish line and found all kinds of texts, emails, hard evidence on her emails, drives, and even some profiles. She had at some sugar baby sites. Oh boy. I regret seeing some things. She was very sloppy and hiding stuff. And once I got access to one email, the Pandora box opened. She is a student. And before I supported her financially, she had no income and no prospect of getting a proper job. The lies and the denial, the way she gets defensive is really tough on me. I offered her financial help before we met, and she didn't accept it. So, as you can see, she is not after my money. Not that I have much. How do I avoid lashing out? Our relationship and arguments can get dicey in seconds as she is bipolar. And I'm what's known as quiet borderline personality disorder, in which I suffer all the pain and lash at myself, not at her. Not a great combo, but the love we have for each other is gigantic. It's been only 1 month since I found out and I already forgave her. But at the same time, I have not forgiven myself over not seeing the red flags. Now, I feel I have to be extra vigilant with her. And she has agreed to disclose all her communications with me as I have. And we basically don't leave any room for anyone to be meddling in our relationship. I want to trust her again, especially since it happened before the relationship was real. But, for me, it felt real since day one. She says she only did it once or twice a month to finance her studies. But I don't know. Most days I believe in her good nature and other days, I worry a cheater is always a cheater. I also feel that because it happened before our first kiss, I am being a bit oversensitive, but I was faithful for that whole year and I suffered intensely. Anytime I remember those days she disappeared, the pain comes back almost undiluted. It seems I'm on the final stages of grief. I've had a hard life and I get over stuff quick, but I still feel traumatized and with a little PTSD. What's the best way to disengage? When our arguments start, They go from 0 to 1000 and 2 seconds. And then the blame game starts. When we are good is the best, but when we are arguing as hell, too intense, too much fire, and both of us get super hurt very quick if the other is not careful. If you enjoyed this story, please show your support by hitting the like button. Your engagement means the world to me and helps keep the stories coming. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on future tales filled with unexpected twists and turns. Subscribing not only keeps you in the loop but also supports me in my quest to bring you more captivating stories. So, take a moment to like and subscribe. Thank you again for your support, and stay tuned for more incredible journeys. Until next time, keep believing in the power of stories to transform. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, and today we have a collection of stories that will make you laugh, cry, and gasp in disbelief. Our video is titled Betrayal, Deception, and Family Tragedy, Shocking Stories of Love and Lies. These stories are filled with unexpected twists, outrageous behavior, and some seriously entertaining drama. But before we dive into these wild stories, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest fun and shocking uploads. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like it and share your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, let's dive into it. This video includes 4 stories. The first story is My in-laws disowned us for refusing to name our baby after a deceased relative. My fiancé, 27 male, and I, 25 female, have an infant son. We're overjoyed at being parents, but most of my in-laws refuse to even see our baby because of our decision concerning his name. My in-laws have a tradition of giving the firstborn son of every generation the same name. Let's say it's Peter. This has been going on for about 7 generations already, and they're very serious about it. My fiancé's eldest cousin was the latest person to get named Peter. Every one of his cousins has only had daughters so far, so our baby is the first son of his generation and consequently should get the name. I have no problem with the name Peter, and I would have been okay with naming my son that. Unfortunately, that was also my uncle's name, who died before I was born. I won't get into details, but it was tragic and traumatizing for my family. My father never got over losing his younger brother. My grandmother asked the family not to name any of our future children Peter during her lifetime. My mother-in-law and father-in-law knew about this promise and, at first, seemed to be not only okay with us avoiding the name Peter, but also supportive of the one we chose. However, my grandmother sadly passed away when I was 7 months pregnant. We traveled for her funeral. On our last days there, my in-laws called to offer me their condolences. Then my mother-in-law asked me if I would think about the name Peter now. Suddenly, they were insistent that the name we chose was awful, and we had to honor their tradition. According to them, they only had agreed to make an exception for us for my grandmother's sake and had no obligation to keep it now that she had passed. My family agrees that, while we don't have to avoid the name anymore, it still doesn't feel right to use it. My fiancé also agrees with me, but his parents spent the last weeks of my pregnancy trying to convince us to change our minds about the name. When our baby was born and we named him what we wanted, my in-laws were furious that we had broken a 7-generation-old family tradition. Some of them hadn't previously wanted to name their sons Peter, but did it anyway for the family's sake. They said our decision was selfish and that my family should have moved on by now. This has nothing to do with whether my family's moved on. It just felt like a betrayal of my grandmother and uncle's memories to even consider using the name. My father-in-law offered us $1,000 to change our son's name to Peter after he was born. That was 2 months ago, and neither of my fiancé's parents have met the baby or seen us since I was pregnant. Most of my in-laws are on their side, and this is causing a huge rift between my fiancé and his family. He assures me he's fine, but I'm starting to feel really guilty about this. Am I the idiot? Edit. The tradition started, as far as I know, when OG Peter died and his son, also named Peter, named his firstborn after his father. Peter III had the first son of the following generation and did the same thing. That one died before having children, so his sister gave the name to her son, and so on. The name Peter is very common in my country, and none of them ever get bullied over it, and the fact that it was also my uncle's name isn't as unlikely as one might think. Also, middle names aren't used in my country. Most people get the maternal surname before the paternal one instead. Some hadn't wanted to name their kid, but did it for the family's sake. Have you broken a pact with Satan or something? Not the idiot. Family name traditions are weird. You can do whatever you want and name your baby. Keep pushing the "I'm honoring my late grandmother's final wishes" part so they see how unhinged they sound, asking you to flout this. Lunatics should never be around babies or kids or me or you. Seriously? Do you live on the set of Dynasty? Ugh. Also, as a grandma, the idea of rejecting a child based on a name is simply trifling. It's downright shallow, petty, and a horrid representation of one's integrity. Honestly, the longer these people avoided my child, the less their value would be worth in my child's life. Who would want such people around after a while? What would they bring to the table for my child? How would people like this positively enrich their development? I feel bad for Opie's partner as this behavior surely has hurt him. As an aside, once again, tradition is a euphemism for misogyny. Note only male children have a special name and all the female children were not fought over. Presumably, no one cared what they were called. All the more reason to end this now. Update: am I the idiot for breaking my fiancé's family tradition by naming my son what I wanted? Thank you so much to everyone who commented and offered support. A lot has happened since, so I'd like to give you an update. About a week after my post, my fiancé's parents contacted us. They apologized for their behavior and begged me to meet my son. They said they were ready to leave the naming debacle behind and truly wanted to be involved in their grandson's life. We were skeptical, but invited them over to meet the baby. The visit went well. They began coming over almost every day during the next 3 weeks. I noticed neither of them ever called my son by his name, but I didn't point it out. Things seemed good for the first time in months between my fiancé and his parents. One day, my fiancé was helping my father-in-law with something at our place, so my mother-in-law and I went to the park with my baby. I had to go to the bathroom sometime later, so I left him in the stroller with her. When I returned, she was sitting on a park bench, chatting with a woman who was cooing over my son, so I went over there and introduced myself as Sunname's mom, and she said, "Oh, I thought his name was Peter." I didn't say a word, and neither did my mother-in-law. She followed me to the car, and we went back to my apartment. On the way there, I texted my fiancé about what had happened. When we arrived, he kicked both his parents out of our place. He'd read my text and confronted his father. Thankfully, my father-in-law is a terrible liar and confessed immediately. Apparently, both my in-laws only call my son Peter. That includes whenever they're talking about him, every time they introduce him to someone else, and even baby talking to him on the few occasions that they were left alone with him. Neither of them is embarrassed by this and thinks they're in the right. We're heartbroken, especially my fiancé, not only because his parents can't let go of their pride, but also because the name we chose for our son means a lot to both of us. I blame myself for encouraging my fiancé to allow them near our son. I was raised in a different city than all my grandparents, and I always wished they could have been more involved in my life. Losing my grandmother didn't help. Pretty much every doubt I had only existed because I thought it would be important for my son to grow up with all of his parents around. But now all my guilt is gone. They don't deserve to be in his life if they can't respect my son enough to call him by his name. I hope they enjoyed the 3 weeks they had with their grandson, because that's all they're getting until they get their heads out of their butts. Yikes. Are they this psychotic and unhinged about other things in life, or just this one issue? What a weird hill for them to die on. We can be grateful you found this out now, because if you play your cards right, by the time they see your son again, he'll know his name. According to my fiancé, they've always been a little entitled, but I never really saw them enough to be able to say that. When the lady from the park asked about his name, it did cross my mind that she might think I was a kidnapper. However, his name is written on one of his blankets, which calmed me down a little. Still, I can't help but think of what my mother-in-law would have done had the woman threatened to call the cops. I seriously can't wrap my head around this. They're throwing away a son, a grandson, future grandchildren, and a daughter-in-law. Family members that some people would give anything to have. That's the real atrocity. That's something for them to feel ashamed about. That's literally so tacky and disgusting of them. I'm sure your husband is so embarrassed and ashamed that his family's being this way. He probably feels guilty, but it's so hurt. I'm so sorry, Opie. Wow, just wow. We recently moved in with my in-laws because I'm 31 weeks pregnant with our first child, and I feel like I need my mother-in-law for support since I've been pretty terrified the entire third trimester and my parents don't live nearby. My husband didn't want to move in with them, and the only reason he did was that I told him I'd go without him and he could stay in our home alone until after the baby's born. His parents are great and very close, so that's not why he didn't want to temporarily move in with them. We've thought about it a lot before we moved. We're still arguing about it now because he thinks it wasn't necessary. I'm stressing over nothing, which maybe I am, but that doesn't magically make the stress disappear. He's said multiple times that I forced him to move here, but he could have stayed at our house like I said. I can't expect my mother-in-law to visit every day, and I feel better in a house with other people around. My husband does sometimes work from home, but he's usually holed up in his office, so it's like he's not here anyway, so this is better for me. My in-laws are more than happy to have us here, but my husband is still sulking and gives me an annoyed look whenever his parents say something about his habits that he doesn't like. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. Did you consider that there may be a reason your husband doesn't want to live with his mother? Also, dropping do this, or I'm leaving in a marriage is unhealthy. Not only do this or I'm leaving, but it's also do this or I'm leaving with your unborn child and won't be back until after their birth. What a crappy ultimatum. Understandable that you want support, but to upheave the entire household and move in with in-laws just because. Sorry, but that's the nuclear option in marriage. What do you say if he says fine and then you don't get his mother because you left him? Everyone around you has to change their lives around because you're afraid. Of what exactly? Grow up, lady. You decided to have a child, not them. Your self-centered, entitled attitude is out of control. I talked to a therapist about anxiety as it can and might only get worse from here. Your doctor must be informed that you moved into your in-laws' house because you're too scared to be alone for labor or when the baby comes. I disagree. Opie is not the idiot. When people ask for help, they're the bad guy or girl. When they don't, they're also the bad guy or girl. What the heck do you people want? She said she needed and wanted help and that she'd like to stay with her mother-in-law because they would be happy to help her. Why is this a problem? If this was her own mother, would anyone blink an eye? Childbirth is a big deal. It's natural to feel some anxiety as a first-time mom. How fortunate that she has supportive in-laws and a good relationship with her mother-in-law. My wife, 31 female, and I, 36 male, had been married for 2 years now, and she has a very regimented wellness and mindfulness routine. She wakes up at 5 a.m., does yoga in the spare room, goes on a quick run, and comes home to make a smoothie using one of those loud Nutri Ninja blenders, and will get on with her day. She also meditates in there, journals, and does other things that I can't disrupt her because it's her personal time. She was like this before I met her, and it was clear that if I wasn't on board with this aspect of her routine, she doesn't want to pursue anything with me. While I'm not thrilled she has the whole room for herself, I did ask if I could put my PC in there so it's not in the dining room space. It was there before I moved in with her, so I made my peace with it. My sister's coming to town with her partner and young daughter, young grammar school age. We both agreed to let them stay with us to save money. My wife wants them to sleep in the living room because we have multiple comfortable sofas for them to sleep on. While there was enough room, I made my case for buying air mattresses for them and setting them up in my wife's spare room. I also asked her if she would part with her smoothie making at least until they wake up so they aren't disturbed in the morning. My wife is vehemently opposed to giving up her room and smoothies. She doesn't think the room will be comfortable for them. No carpets, and it's got huge windows and massive mirrors on one wall, and says that if I'm using this situation to disrupt her routine, which I apparently hate, I'm not sure where she got that from since I've never asked her to change it. We're in for a disagreement over where they should stay, and my wife is even threatening to not allow them to stay and have them get a hotel for the visit. Am I the idiot? I don't think giving up the room is that hard to ask for my family's comfort, and it's only 3 days. As someone who's currently in the throes of a deep, dark depression, I feel like your wife's routine was possibly born out of an absolute necessity and that it may be the thing that keeps her functional. I would say that she was very clear with you about how important her routine was, so I think you are the idiot for wanting her to change it. I do also understand that she may be seen as non-accommodating, but it was never a secret. Some things that look selfish are more than what they seem from the outside. I don't care if he agreed. Anyone who needs to run a blender early in the morning with guests is selfish and needs therapy to work through their issues. I'm a creature of habit too, but that's not an excuse for rudeness. She needs to work through her issues in therapy. Dominating an environment and being unable to care for others is a big issue. Also, people can readjust their positions and evolve over time. Then the guest should stay in a hotel. They can also readjust their positions. She made it clear she has a routine. She's trying to work with you by letting them stay with y'all, but you're so desperate to interrupt a routine that's somehow bugging you that you refuse to see it. Perhaps you should ask yourself why you are so resentful of this routine. Is it because it's her time with herself and she isn't paying attention to you? Or because you're jealous that you don't have that same dedicated time allotted for you to have your time? Look at yourself and figure it out soon. Update. Thank you for all the advice, everyone. I've decided not to push this issue any further with my wife, and my sister and family can use the sofas, or I'll pay partly for a hotel for them. I do plan on asking my wife about her routine. She thinks that because the living room and kitchen are separated by a room, there's no need to muffle the blender sound on top of more than we already do with the insulation pads and a shut door. My wife, 28, has recently gone back to work after a long break after our daughter, kindergarten, was born. She's experienced a few hard days at work. I, 32 female, thought it might lift her mood up a little bit if I cook something for her with the I don't cook around the house because of my work schedule, but I decided to do it for her to help boost her mood. We made our dining room into a restaurant. I got us both chef hats and matching aprons and we cooked. While cooking, we made a bit of a mess in the kitchen. We were almost done when I got a call from her. She said her mom, my mother-in-law, they live in a different state and we barely see each other, had come to pay a visit and ask me to prepare the guest room if I could and said she'd be home shortly. So, I panicked and couldn't clean up before they arrived. They came home to a messy kitchen and my daughter acting as a restaurant manager. My wife adored the whole thing, but her mom immediately said how we lived with all this mess was disappointing. She said serving someone food like this in their home was ridiculous and made fun of the process. My wife told me to just let it go, but somehow I felt like a huge idiot because the timing could not be worse and my wife, and I stayed up cleaning the mess that night. Am I the idiot? Your mother-in-law is the idiot with no notice? What was it, a surprise inspection? You did something wonderful with your daughter and she'll always remember it. Your wife isn't upset. She has more love for you because you did it. Not the idiot. Mother-in-law can stay at Motel 6. Motel 6 sounds like an appropriate punishment. Do you know what is ridiculous? People showing up unannounced, staying for the night, and daring to complain and mock you and your kid. Perhaps she'd be happier somewhere else, like her state. What an idiot. What kind of relationship does your wife have with her mother that, even though the mother-in-law lives in a different state and you had zero notice, she was showing up? I would not be cool with that at all. Your mother-in-law being judgy and rude blows my mind. Cooking makes things messy, and she was a last-minute guest. Not to mention the restaurant thing is adorable. Oh, honey, your mother-in-law needs a reality check and a respect for others.